And welcome back to the Zolteus Gaming Channel. I'm your host, Zolteus. Back with another episode of Empire of Sin Henchmen Review. We are on to the middest of tiers, Tier 3. But I mean, after we get finished, you'll understand why I call this the hired gun tier. If you've already played and kind of looked at some of these guys in the mid tier, you'll understand that there are quite a few hired guns to choose from. So, we are going to start with our singles, which, weirdly enough, is 3 out of 5 of them. So, first one we're going to look at, Dominic Court. So, he's a demo guy. He has a pretty decent hit point, pretty high hit point. He also has a decent initiative. It's definitely something you want out of your demolitionist. He's also got an above average leadership and melee. Good lord, look at that. I mean, it's not necessarily, what you want out of a demolitionist, but I mean, he's melee focused. So if you wanted to put him as like a I don't know, maybe have him coincide with your brawlers, or you wanted to do something special with a demolitionist and have the demolitionist kind of, be a secondary skill for him. I mean, cool. But yeah, 104, like that's higher than a majority of your enforcers. So yeah, I mean, something to look out for. Also, he actually has a really good base marksman. He just, unfortunately for him, he's got a burst fire weapon, and he's got an ability that takes away 10 marksmen. But that ability that takes away 10 marksmen also gives him all of his melee, and he also has a chance to activate air trigger because of it. So, decent. He also has immovable, which good. I mean, it's always good to not be pushed around, right? And he also has brave, which means he gets that bonus to initiative when outnumbered. So, pretty good there. His negatives are he actually has a natural negative defense, and that fell on hard times, you plus 10% you see, actually adds on to the negative defense. So it's definitely something that you would have to be aware of if you were to make a melee focused negative defense enforcer or demolitionist here. The other thing, he's kind of got a mid-tier move here, 5, and your demolitionist is going to need to be able to move to throw them bombs. So that's kind of a downer right there. He also has intolerant, which is that minus to crit chance and minus to damage. So not good there, especially when you're talking with a bursty weapon like explosives. And like we went over, angry, but the other thing is this is where his negative 10 bonus defense comes from, and he has to be an alcoholic to get some of the other bonuses, which isn't necessarily great. But because of that ballroom brawler, like I said, he would actually make a pretty good melee guy. And he also has never be disrespected, so that's something that I just make sure you're aware of, is if you don't promote him to underboss, he has a chance that he might leave. So just keep that in mind. So that's your demolitionist on this tier. We're going to now look at the only con artist on here, and that's Percival. Percival has a decent hit point and a decent move. So decent, not too bad. Not like excellent, but not too bad. Specifically the movement. It'd be great if he had a bit better movement. But I think he has the highest hit points of the con artists so far. The other good thing, he is decent. He has pretty good leadership, and he has pretty good marksman. Now, unfortunately, he normally starts with 80, but he has -5 from Sullen. But that does specifically state a 90 rounds remaining, so hopefully that'll go away. He also has small, which gives him that bonus to defense. So this defense is natural. So that's always nice. And he has, where is it? There it is. Kind. When lieutenant, he gives a plus 10 morale bonus to crew members and a plus 10% chance to resist status effects. So pretty decent there. The big thing for him is the combination of afraid and coward. So, not that great, especially if you tend to do what I do, which, my enforcers tend to go down a lot, but I specifically invest in the ability that gives them 4 rounds before they bleed out. So, this is definitely something that you'll want to have in mind if you choose Percival as a con artist. The other thing I didn't mention is his initiative is pretty good. He's got 2 bonuses to his base, so he's looking pretty good there. But that's pretty much it for the con artists. Next, we're gonna go look at the only doctor on here, and that's Philip. All right, Philip. He's got a good amount of hit points there. That's always going to be good. He also has a very I don't know why I said he has a high initiative, but he has a pretty average initiative. I had it written down that he had a high initiative, but I don't think that's the case. Re-looking at him, maybe I was looking at someone else, but he has a pretty low base initiative, and it's really not that good with his bonus. So this is pretty low right here. He also has a decent marksman and decent leadership. And the reason I say decent marksman is because he has a high base, but he has no bonuses to it, which you wouldn't expect doctors to have that, but it's still, it's on the high end for doctors, but it's still kind of just mid-tier. He also has small, which gives him that natural bonus defense, so that's good. It gives him a minus to melee, but we shouldn't care about melee with a doctor. He also has calm, which is that 25% chance to bleed out instead of die, so you don't necessarily have to worry about investing in the skill tree because he already has the ability here, which is nice. But this is only 25% chance, whereas the skill is 100%. So also keep that in mind. The big problem with him, especially as a doctor, is he has a kind of a mid-tier movement. You're going to need your doctors to be mobile, especially if you're maintaining a lot of enforcers, or at least more than one enforcer. But yeah, so that's really the only big problem with Philip. So, not too bad there. All right, now moving on to our first category that actually has more than one available, and that's the enforcer.
Yeah, good
so
to see
you have Gracia. Gracia is an enforcer that has a very good marksman. Now, it's not a high base, but she has a lot of bonuses to it, which gives her a pretty decent high stat there. She also has a pretty good initiative. That plus gives her those bonuses and that good base initiative, and that actually comes from Trust No One, which are those bonuses. Now, if you hire her and put her in the crew and she is near people, she will lose these bonuses, so these go away. So it's something to keep in mind. She also has a very high movement, and she's got a pretty decent leadership bonus going there. So not too bad. And I always highlight leadership. I know I don't go over a lot of the other skills unless it's specifically like enforcer. I'll touch on melee here, but I always talk about leadership because there's always positions to fill that require decent leadership. So decent leadership there. Her melee is kind of lowish, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but she has decent hit points. Not the highest we've seen for an enforcer, but it's still pretty high. She has thick-skinned. We all know about thick-skinned. And that trust no one that I've already talked about. So those bonuses are going to be good. And if she's an enforcer and you're using her in a way that enforcers are normally used, she's going to be on an island. So she should be away from those other friendly characters, with the exceptions of when the doctor runs in there to do a heal. But yeah, so some of the negatives are that's kind of a lower melee. It's not the lowest we've seen, but it's still, for an enforcer, it's still kind of low. She also, I talk about intimidation every once in a while, but extremely low intimidation, which you would think you would want in an enforcer. And she's got intolerant, which is that -5% to chance to crit and crit damage. So things to be aware of with Gracia. Next, we're going to talk about Jack McGurn. All right, so Jack here, he has highest hit points we've seen in the enforcer so far. I think we've seen one other person with this, but high. He's got a high base marksman, which, to be honest, we're not super concerned with Jack on marksman, but it's good to have that high base. He has a decent melee and a decent movement. It's not, super awesome movement, but it's still better than average. And that melee, he gets those bonuses. So if you ever get anything that adds to melee, it's just those bonuses are going to stack on top of each other. So that's going to be good. He has decent initiative. It's I wouldn't say this initiative is off the charts, but it's decent. And he has a decent leadership skill. So, not too bad there. I'd say initiative is a little bit mid-tier. It might be a negative, but it's still one of the better initiatives we've seen out of the enforcers so far. He also has hair trigger, and it's 100% chance to trigger, which is good. It's definitely something you want in an enforcer. And he has thick-skinned. So those are the bonuses, or those are the pluses. So the negatives, there really isn't one unless you want to go the initiative route. Yeah, he has kind of a low initiative. It's unfortunate, but it's still decent. He still gets a bonus. It's not off the charts, but it's not like down in the 20s. So, not too bad there. So that's Jack. Moving on to the last one, we have Gale. All right, so Gale, she has a high base marksman, so decent, and a higher melee than Jack. So she's got, not only does she have bonus percentages, but she just has a straight bonus, and her base is pretty decent there. So she's already beaten all the other enforcers in this tier with melee. She also has a pretty high leadership skill, a really high base initiative, so that makes quite a difference. And she also has that high hit points, so that is nice. She also has immovable and brave when we're out of combat, so not too bad. Overall, not too many negatives. I'd say the only real one is this movement right here. She can't go as far, so that's not great. I used to call no starting weapons negatives, but I've gotten away from that because chances are, if you're going to hire someone, you're going to have a weapon that you're going to want to give them anyway. So if I were to rate the enforcers, I would have to say that because of the lower initiative, I would give it to Gale before Jack. Jack, though, has that better movement, which might make him a bit better in utility. But it's up to how you look at it. That 58, 56 initiative just, in my opinion, pushes her over the top with those bonuses in melee. So I have to give it to Gale. I would go Gale, then Jack. So now, moving on to why I called this the tier of the hired gun, we have 6 choices to choose from for the hired guns. First one we're going to look at is Josephine, which weirdly enough is one of my personal favorites. Here's why. We got a lot of bonuses to marksman here, folks. This is a lot. This is good stuff right here. So keep that in mind. High marksman, pretty decent initiative there. Plus 40, which means she definitely won't be the last to go, and that's nice. She has a high bonus to defense, and she's got that decent hit points. And I'm going to say decent movement, and the only reason I'm going to say that is because you don't really need your hired guns to move too much. The baddies will come to you. They just need to be good at marksman, and so I say decent move. She also has happy, which that natural defense bonus, which is nice. So you're not just counting on in love. You've actually got the other things. And she's got happy, which gives her plus to marksman and plus 5% morale bonus for nearby party members. I mean, like I've said in a previous video, you would be surprised at how quickly you can lose morale for your party members if you don't pay attention. And just that bonus morale is awesome stuff there. She also has easy come, easy go. This person does not lose morale. I mean, that's nice to know that, no matter what, if their morale is 100, it's not going to dip below that. It's just going to keep going up. That is nice. Some of those negatives, I'd still call that kind of like a mid move. It's okay, but it's still a mid move. And like I originally put no starting weapon, but we're kind of moving past that. So not really any other bad things. It's just that mid-tier movement. So that's Josephine. That's one of the reasons why she's one of my favorites. Next, we're going to look at Paulie. All right, so Paulie, I wrote high initiative, and I don't know why, because that's not really a high initiative. But either way, all right. So decent hit points. He's got a lower base marksman, plus he's using a weapon that lowers that marksman. You can change that out, so we're not going to hold that against him. It's still a low base marksman. He doesn't have a whole lot of bonuses. He has natural defense. That's good because, like I said, you don't always want to count on things that are out of your control. I mean, you can go out of your way to hire, henchmen's lovers if you want, but sometimes we don't get that option, and so you don't always just want to count on that defense bonus. So he has that natural, and that's good. Negatives. I'm gonna, this initiative really isn't that good, so that's a negative for Paulie. He has kind of a mid-tier movement, so not great, but I'm not going to hold it against him. But he also has afraid, so this person has a chance to flee from combat if someone on their crew dies. So something that you really can't, you can afford it in your damage dealers, you just don't want it in your damage dealers. So that's Paulie. As you can see, really mid to low tier stats, just all the way around. So, kind of on my low scale as far as this tier. Next, we're going to look at Frederick. Frederick here, once again, high marksman. He's got a lot of similar stats that Josephine does. He also has a pretty decent initiative, so similar to Josephine. He's got a pretty good defense bonus. It's not as high as Josephine, but it's still, we're still looking at a decent defense bonus there. He has one of the higher hit points so far for the hired guns, and he has a pretty decent leadership bonus there. He also has happy, like Josephine does, so that +5 bonus to morale, awesome. He also has a mid-tier movement. So not great. He has a decent base melee, but we really don't. It really doesn't factor in. At least it shouldn't for a hired gun. So that's Frederick. Not a whole lot of horrible negatives for him, but we'll keep that in mind as we rank them later. All right, next we've got Esther. So Esther, she has high marksman, a couple bonuses, and that high base, so that's good. She also has that decent initiative in comparison, but she also her initiative is lower than Josephine and Frederick, so it's definitely something to keep in mind. One of the higher leadership bonuses, which is good. She also has a pretty high defense bonus. So not only does she have a non-natural bonus, but she has a natural bonus from small. So, that's good. She has, like I said, one of the higher hit points we've seen in hired guns so far. And she has thick skin. So that's nice. She can resist that criticals, or she can resist those criticals. So she still has a mid-tier movement. I'm gonna say that her initiative just doesn't, it's not up to snuff, especially when you have people like Josephine and Frederick who have higher marksman and higher initiative. She's greedy. She has a plus 1% to her salary, so that's not necessarily a good start. And she still has that small, and that's nice, but it does drop her melee, which once again, we're talking about hired guns, so we don't care about melee, but that's why one of her stats is pretty small. So, that's Esther in a nutshell. She, good defense, good marksman, but there are plenty of negatives that come with her. All right, after Esther, we are going to talk about Eddie Callahan. So, Eddie Callahan, he has a pretty high marksman, and he has the highest initiative so far out of all of the hired guns, 43. At a minimum, his bonuses, he's got 2 of them, like all of the other ones normally would, unless you'd have something like Happy, which gives you that plus 5. But high base and those bonuses, so that's good. He also has the higher of hit points, like everyone else does. He has that decent defense. He doesn't have anything that adds to it other than love, but he has that plus 10% from one of his blue traits, so that's good. Here's one of the other things that I will say on the defense bonus with Eddie. You'll notice that when I hover over these 2, they're the ones that give themselves those defensive bonuses. So if you wanted to ensure that stayed there forever, you could take both of them because they both have the same notoriety requirement, and you could force that bonus to stick around as long as you controlled these characters and neither of them died. Whereas if you had someone like Clyde, you would have to wait 205 notoriety to gain his lover to keep that defense bonus. So it's just things to keep in mind. I call that a bonus, which is why I rated them where I did once we're all done, and I'll tell you. But yeah, I mean, at a minimum, you have the potential to control keeping his bonus there. He also has a high melee. Once again, we don't care, but he has brawny, which is the only reason why I bring it up. Plus 10 to damage and plus 10 to melee. So, if you needed him to be, he could be a makeshift melee guy if the enemy gets too close. He also has that pretty high leadership, so decent there. His negatives, kind of a mid-tier movement. I'm not gonna talk too much about that. He's greedy. He also wants that plus 1% to salary, so something to look into. And then you have tolerant, which once again I lump in the negative category because the way it is worded makes me think that this is a plus 5% personal injury chance as opposed to causing injury. I'm still looking into some of the patch notes from the previous patches just to see if this was meant to be a positive, because I want to say it is, because intolerant gives you that negatives, where tolerant you would think would give you positives. But we'll see. He also has no starting weapon. Once again, we're not gonna go there. So, pretty decent stats here. Highest initiative so far, but it's only by 3, and he's greedy. So we'll move on. We'll move on from him. And last but not least, we have Frank. Frank has, once again, high hit points. He has decent initiative. It's still not great. Decent marksman. High base, but he only has 1 bonus, and then he's using a weapon that takes away from that. He's a decent leadership bonus. He has immovable, so that's nice. If you have him positioned specifically where you want him to do the most damage, whether it's AoE damage with a Tommy gun or best line of sight to hit enemies far away, you don't want him to be moving. So, nice. He also has aggressive, which is nice. You gain that 2 morale when involved in combat. So that's good. Some of his negatives, though, he has kind of that mid-tier movement, that mid-tier to low initiative, and he has absolutely 0 defense. He has a defense bonus, but he doesn't have any at the moment, so he has no natural defense bonus. So, not that great. Now, if I were to rate all of these, I'm going to start from the bottom. Frankie's kind of the worst. It was really close between him and Paulie. Paulie is also pretty good, but Paulie at a minimum had that natural defense, and so he just lacks some traits. So I made Frank my lowest. Based on that defensive bonus, at a minimum, Paulie has some of that natural defense, so he has a little bit more survivability. But then that takes me over to Paulie. There he is. That takes me over to Paulie. He also has that low base marksman, but he has an even lower initiative. But he had that defense bonus, which makes him a little bit more salvageable. Yes, he does have the afraid. But it's if you can control the fight, you can get more out of Paulie than you would out of Frank, just in survivability, and especially in the higher difficulties, survivability is something that you're going to look for, which is one of the reasons why I put Paulie over him. So he's number 5. All right, then we go to the couple. You have Esther and Eddie, and now out of the 2, because I did rank them 3rd and 4th, I ranked Eddie 4th, specifically because he had that tolerant, which the jury's out on this one. We still don't know if this is a bonus. I want to say it is, and if it is, I may switch them. But he has brawny, which absolutely does nothing for us as a hired gun. So useless skills, whereas she has thick-skinned and small, so she gets the nod above Eddie. So Eddie 4th, Esther 3rd. Next is 2nd, and it was tough choosing, but I chose Frederick as 2nd under Josephine. So Frederick was 2nd. They have a lot of similar abilities, decent leadership, that matching marksman at 107, that matching initiative at 40, matching movement at 5. The 2 big things here is Josephine has an ability that I'll talk about in a second, and she has that higher defensive bonus. Once again, we're talking about survivability here. So definitely the reason why. All right, looking at Josephine. She has that high marksman. She has that high initiative, high defensive bonus. She has easy come, easy go. And, combine not losing morale with giving more morale to the party. It's almost irreplaceable. So definitely the number one there. So, out of this tier, I think you get a lot of good hired gun options. It's unfortunate you have to wait until, 300 notoriety to start picking them. But good tier of hired guns. So that's going to do it for this episode. Like and subscribe for more content. And as always, I will see you in the next video.